For most of my adult life, I had a strange problem. People were never openly rude to me. No insults, no aggression, no clear rejection. And yet, I was ignored. At work, my ideas were skipped until someone else repeated them. In conversations, people talked over me without even noticing. In groups, decisions were made around me, not with me. I was present, but I wasn't felt. And that's the most humiliating kind of invisibility. Because when someone disrespects you openly, at least you know where you stand. When they ignore you quietly, you start blaming yourself in silence. I thought I was lacking confidence. Then I thought I needed better communication. Then I thought maybe I was just unlucky with people. I was wrong. The truth was much simpler and much harder to accept. For years, I believed something that sounded reasonable. I believed that if I was calm, at peace, polite, helpful, emotionally available, people would naturally respect me. That's what we're taught. Be nice. Be understanding. Explain yourself. Avoid conflict. Show empathy. So I did exactly that. I explained my decisions. I justified my boundaries. I clarified my intentions. I softened my words. And every time I did, something invisible happened. People didn't move closer. They stepped on me. Not aggressively, not consciously. They just adjusted to my lack of weight. This is the part no one warns you about. One day, I noticed something uncomfortable. The men who were respected the most were not the nicest ones. They weren't the loudest either. They were the least explainable. They didn't overshare. They didn't over-justify. They didn't rush to be understood. They spoke less, and when they spoke, people listened. Not because they demanded attention, but because they didn't chase it. That's when it hit me. Respect wasn't something I was missing. I was actively leaking it. I didn't find Stoicism through motivation videos. I found it because I was tired of feeling unseen. Stoicism didn't tell me to believe in myself. It didn't tell me to visualize success. It didn't tell me to dominate anyone. It told me something colder, something far more useful. Control what is yours. Withdraw from what isn't. And let outcomes speak louder than words. At first, that sounded passive. Then I realized it was terrifyingly strict, because it meant I had no one to blame. The core Stoic truth no one says out loud. Here is the truth that changed everything for me. People don't respect explanations. They respect containment. When you explain yourself excessively, you are not clarifying. You are negotiating your position, and every negotiation signals doubt. Stoicism taught me that authority is not built by expression. It is built by restraint. How invisible men sabotage themselves without knowing. Invisible men usually share the same habits. I had all of them. I filled silence too quickly. I responded immediately. I offered more than was asked. I tried to be fair before being firm. Each habit seems harmless. Together, they form a clear message. I am available. I am adjustable. I am safe to ignore. No one wakes up thinking, I'll disrespect him today. They simply respond to what you signal. And I was signaling softness, not kindness. There's a difference. The first change, stop explaining. The first Stoic rule I applied was brutal. I stopped explaining my decisions. Not angrily, not defensively. I just stopped. Instead of saying, I chose this because, I said, this is what I'm doing. And then I stayed silent. That silence was uncomfortable for them and for me. But something strange happened. People didn't argue more. They argued less, because there was nothing to grab onto. Most men fear silence because they think it exposes weakness. In reality, silence exposes others. When you don't rush to explain, people project. They assume confidence. They assume thoughtfulness. They assume strength, even when you feel none of that inside. Stoicism isn't about how you feel. It's about what you emit. Workplace, where invisibility is most obvious. At work, I used to over-prepare explanations. Every decision came with a defense. I thought clarity earned respect. What it earned was scrutiny. So I changed one thing. I spoke in conclusions, not stories. No emotional framing. No background justification. Just, this is the approach. And silence. Some people tested me. I didn't react. They adjusted. Family, where invisibility is normalized. Family was harder, because family feels entitled to explanations. I used to defend my choices constantly. To career, lifestyle, boundaries, I stopped. Not with speeches, with one sentence. This works for me. No debate, no persuasion. At first, there was tension. Then, acceptance. Not agreement, acceptance. Stoicism doesn't promise approval. It promises position. Friendships, who stays when you stop over-giving. When I reduced availability, some friendships faded. That hurt. But it also clarified something important. Men who respect you don't need constant access. Men who use you do. Stoicism doesn't cling. It observes and lets reality sort itself out. The most important shift internal, not external. The biggest change wasn't how others treated me. It was how little I needed to be seen. I stopped trying to correct perceptions. I stopped fixing misunderstandings. I stopped managing impressions. That internal withdrawal created external gravity. People leaned in, not because I asked them to, because I stopped leaning out. Someone interrupts you to see if you rush to reclaim space. Someone questions your choice to see if you defend it. Someone ignores a boundary to see if you bend. These are not attacks. They are calibrations. People constantly calibrate social hierarchies. Before I failed every test, by overreacting or over-explaining. Now I pass them by doing almost nothing. Silence, stillness, consistency, that's de Briolo. Consistency is where most men fail. Anyone can be silent once. Authority comes from repetition. If you explain today and stay silent tomorrow, people stay confused. Stoicism demands sameness, same tone, same pace, same emotional temperature. Not cold, contained. This is exhausting at first, because you're no longer entertaining people or managing their reactions. You're managing yourself. The loneliness phase. There is a phase no one warns you about. When you stop being invisible, you are not immediately respected. First, you are left alone. Less messages, less invitations, less casual access. This is not rejection, it's restructuring. You are no longer easy to place, and people need time to decide how to approach you now. Stoicism teaches patience here. If you chase connection in this phase, you reset everything. Why most advice fails invisible men? Most advice says, speak up more, assert yourself, show confidence. That advice assumes you already have weight. Invisible men don't lack expression. They lack density. Stoicism builds density by removal. Fewer words, fewer reactions, fewer emotional leaks. What remains is pressure, and pressure changes rooms. The moment it clicks, the shift didn't happen in a dramatic moment. No confrontation, no applause. It happened quietly. I noticed people waiting for my response, checking my reaction, adjusting their tone. Nothing was said. Everything changed. That's when I understood. I didn't become important. I became self-contained, and that made others cautious. The discipline of doing less. One of the hardest lessons was this: doing less is harder than doing more. When you are invisible, action feels like progress. Talking feels like effort. Explaining feels productive. Stoicism reverses that instinct. It forces you to ask, is this necessary, or is this me trying to be seen? Most of the time, it was the second. I learned to pause before acting. Not to hesitate, but to filter. If an action didn't increase clarity, stability, or position, I didn't do it. That alone removed 70% of my behavior, and with it, 70% of my invisibility. Why restraint confuses people? People are used to predictable men who want, always reply, always explain, always smooth things over. When you stop doing that, people feel disoriented. They don't know where you stand, how to read you, how much access they have. That confusion is not weakness. It's uncertainty, and uncertainty forces respect, because people become careful. Stoicism doesn't demand attention. It creates caution. Emotional self-sufficiency is visible. Here's something subtle but powerful. People can sense when you don't need them. Not in a hostile way, in a grounded way. When you stop using conversation to regulate emotions, validation to stabilize identity, agreement to feel safe, your presence changes. You are no longer feeding on the room. You're standing inside yourself. Stoicism builds that internal posture, and posture is contagious. The temptation to explain returns. Even after months, the urge comes back. A misunderstanding, a false assumption, a quiet dismissal. Your instinct screams, correct this, clarify, fix it. Stoicism asks a harder question: does correcting this improve my position or just my comfort? Most corrections are emotional hygiene, not strategic necessity. I learned to let some misunderstandings exist, and here's the shock: most of them corrected themselves. Silence sharpens observation. When you speak less, you notice more. You notice who leans in, who tests limits, who grows uncomfortable, who respects space. Invisibility ends not when people praise you, but when they monitor you. Monitoring means you matter. No one monitors noise. They monitor weight. Stoicism builds weight. The shift from reaction to selection. Before I reacted to situations, now I select responses. Reaction is automatic. Selection is controlled. That difference is everything. When you react, people lead. When you select, you frame. Even if you say very little. Especially then. Why most men can't hold this posture. This way of being is quiet, unrewarding at first. Socially unrewarded. No compliments, no immediate feedback. Just internal discipline. Most men abandon it because it feels lonely. It feels empty. It feels slow. They mistake silence for stagnation. But Stoicism compounds invisibly, until one day it's obvious. The moment you stop trying to be liked. This was a turning point. Not hatred, not bitterness, indifference. I stopped optimizing for likability. Not intentionally. It just faded. And paradoxically, people became more polite. Not warmer, more careful. Respect doesn't come from warmth. It comes from boundaries. Stoicism sharpens boundaries by making them unspoken. Authority without performance. The most liberating realization was this: I didn't need to act authoritative. I just needed to stop performing weakness. No posture tricks, no dominance games, no forced confidence, just removal. Stoicism is subtractive power. When you realize you're no longer invisible, you don't notice it at first. Then small things happen. People wait for your reply, ask instead of assume, lower their voice, check your reaction. Nothing dramatic, just a shift. And once you feel it, you can unsee it.